people, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody. Well, as we speak, there are 41,000 people down in Greenwich. They're all going to run in a London marathon. It's an extraordinary number of people, and with midday temperatures due to be about 23 degrees centigrade, low 70s Fahrenheit, a lot of people are going to have a very, very tough few hours coming back. I can't tell you how thrilled I am not to be one of them at that starting line, but I know a lot of people are there, and they're doing it for charity, they're doing it for good causes, and, you know, if you're not an athlete, it takes a bit of guts, doesn't it, to train and run in that marathon, and we will, over the course of the next couple of hours, bring you news from the event, let you know what is going on. Last night, I was very privileged, I think, to be invited to the Royal Albert Hall. It was the Queen's 92nd birthday yesterday. And, of course, her official birthday comes in June. And that's when we have Trooping the Colour, etc. There'd never, ever been before an official event on the Queen's actual birthday. But yeah, it was yesterday, her actual 92nd birthday. And of course, it comes at the end of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which took place in London this week. Big event, huge debates about the Commonwealth, what's its future, how does Brexit fit in, what does the Windrush scandal mean in terms of our relationships with all of these countries. And the reason the birthday party happened is because the Commonwealth Heads of State were in town. Royal Albert Hall, if you haven't been, it is the most extraordinary venue. Gosh, the Victorians were good at building things and doing things. I loved it. Tom Jones, other acts for the youngsters, Sting. It was really good fun. But the best bit was, she was sitting there in the royal box. Charles was with her. The two princes were there. Harry, in fact, appeared on stage and gave a speech about his grandmother. And I thought she'd gone. She wasn't sitting there. And we all thought, well, maybe she's gone before the big rush, or I don't know. And then, at the end, she appeared on stage. And I tell you what, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And it is extraordinary, the love that this woman seems to generate, you know, and not just in Britain, around the wider world. She is a remarkable woman. These decades of service that she's given are quite extraordinary. She loves the Commonwealth. She has always loved the Commonwealth, and she, with her husband, the Duke, I mean, they have spent, you know, months and months and months of their lives just travelling around Commonwealth countries. But I wonder, what is the Commonwealth? Is it relevant? Do you know what it really means? It's a remarkable thing because if you think about all the other European countries who built up their empires in the 19th and 20th centuries, nearly every single one of them have dreadful relationships with their former colonies. And yet here we are, having had the biggest empire that the world's ever seen, that now has this amazing relationship with all of them through this club that is called the Commonwealth. There are 53 countries in the Commonwealth. The population of those countries is 2.4 billion people. So getting on for 1 in 3 of the world's population live in Commonwealth countries. The Queen is the head of the Commonwealth, and it was decided this week that Prince Charles in turn will succeed her. That doesn't mean it'll be a member of the British royal family forever that will head the Commonwealth. And I guess as the years go on, it may well adapt, it may well change. Many of the countries in the Commonwealth are tiny little islands in the Atlantic, the Pacific, but of course the big one is India, with over 1 billion people. We as a country, back in the early 1970s, made a big strategic decision. We decided that the Commonwealth was old hat, that the Commonwealth, frankly, was backward, and if we looked across the Channel to France and Germany, that looked to be shiny, bright, new and successful, and we took a big decision, and that decision was to join the European community, and we saw Europe as our future. 45 years on, we actually see that some of the fastest growing economies in the world are in the Commonwealth, and the kind of bond of friendship that exists within it is so great, there are now countries applying to join the Commonwealth who were never even part of the British Empire. And with Brexit, there are some amazing opportunities. I had a meeting yesterday with New Zealand's Foreign Minister. He's really excited about what Brexit can mean for the relationship between us and New Zealand and for trade. Clearly, Brexit was a big thing that was discussed this week. If we're freed to make our own trade deals, there are some real opportunities out there. But I wonder, we had the scandal this week, the Windrush scandal, and whether it's Labour or the Tories' fault, frankly, isn't really the point. Clearly, something gone horribly wrong in the Home Office. But would a closer Commonwealth mean even more immigration coming into this country? Because India have said already, if there's a trade deal between us and India, they want freer access for Indian people to come to Britain. So moving this forwards isn't going to be easy. There are going to be arguments and debates. I suspect immigration will be at the heart of it. But for my money, I think the Commonwealth is the most incredibly underrated asset that exists out there in the world. It's a fantastic opportunity for us. And how amazing that actually in America now, the Royal Commonwealth Society has set up an office. So it's becoming a bigger, broader thing. It's becoming an organisation for the English-speaking peoples of the world. And I want to know from you, what does the Commonwealth mean to you? And if you're a younger person, tell me, what have you been taught at school about it, if anything? Call me on 0345 6060 973. And if you come from a Commonwealth country and you're now living in the United Kingdom, what do you think the future relationship between our countries is going to be? But maybe you think, no. This is all completely outdated. The fact that Charles is going to succeed her, it's just the Brits trying to have a softer form of empire, and actually it's all old hat. If that's how you feel, then tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and watch us on Facebook and comment there too. I'm going to ask Mark in Newark. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Nigel.
So what do you think about the Commonwealth?
Well, I think that based on your politics of what you believe in about Europe, which I'm not saying you're completely wrong, based on a lot of things that you feel, you personally should be against everything that the Commonwealth, and particularly the monarchy, appeals at. The idea that she got Charles in, and she got all these heads of state of all these other countries in the Commonwealth together, and then she basically sort of pushed the son onto them, is exactly the sort of unelected quango that you personally would despise.
Well, OK, unelected. I wouldn't say the monarchy is an unelected quango.
Of course she's unelected. How is she elected?
She is.
Queen? Nobody.
It's a slightly separate debate, Mark, and I did make the point that I'm sure that after Charles it will be somebody else. The point about the Queen, and the reason it works, is because she is an apolitical figure.
But she's not an apolitical figure. If she was an apolitical figure, she wouldn't be pushing her son onto them, would they? So don't believe this idea that she's an apolitical figure. It's just not true.
I see her as apolitical, and if it wasn't her...
Nigel, why do people like you understand the idea of meritocracy, and you're against all these things, but you seem to sort of like, for some reason, you have a blind spot with the monarchy. Why do you feel that way?
Well, because I'd rather have the Queen than President Blair. Because if we didn't have a monarch, we would get a politician
far better than us having a monarchy.
Right, I tell you what, Mark. Let's take the monarchy out of it for the moment.
Okay, let's take the monarchy
out of it for the moment. It could well have been the other countries could have said to the Queen, no, we don't want Charlie Boy. We want somebody from India. They are the biggest country in the Commonwealth. Taking the monarchy and the head of the Commonwealth out of it, do you think the organisation itself has potential for the future?
Not under the British Empire Commonwealth, no. The idea of a British, English-speaking people that you mentioned, across the other federation, I'm not against that. I'm not against that at all. But the idea that the monarchy is at the heart of it is utter nonsense. And I'll tell you something else as well. If that was the case, that this model of British, this monarchist system that you keep sort of like pushing up against, and you're privileged to be there, which is...
Yes, I was very privileged to be there, Mark. I loved it. It was great.
Well, you are an idiot if you feel that way. I'm sorry, but you are.
Well, I tell you what, Mark. There were a lot of idiots there last night.
Wait a minute. Half of the Commonwealth countries, including the largest ones, are either already republics or are going towards being republics, as you know yourself.
Well, she's still the head of state, of course, of 14 of those countries, but most of them have moved on with their independence, and they don't want the British monarch as their head of state anymore. But, Mark, what is remarkable is that, 70 years ago, nearly all these countries were in the British Empire. They're now independent countries, and yet they've still got a great relationship with us.
That's another nonsense.
Isn't that wonderful?
The fact that the only other country in the world that had a large empire like us and has since had broken up into different countries, is France. And they get on far better with their...
Oh, you are having me on, Mark, aren't you? Do you think France and Algeria get on well? They hate each other.
French Guyana and so forth, and half of the South Pacific still want to be part of France. They made a department. There was a football thing a while ago when a team, Nice, had to play a team from French Caledonia, from New Caledonia in the south thing, because they didn't want to be independent. So this idea that...
Well, the one thing, Mark, the French did do, one of the things the French did do well that we didn't do well, is the French actually have representation in their National Assembly for Réunion and places like that. And we didn't do that, and I rather wish we had. You know, Malta, for example, under Dom Mintov, Malta wanted to become part of the United Kingdom with its own representation in Parliament, and we said no. So France, with their smaller former territories, has a good relationship. With Algeria, it has a terrible relationship. But Mark, let me just finish on this point. Whatever you think about the monarchy, I would argue this. Today, I think the monarchy is more popular than it's been at any point in our history. And the younger generation in this country look at the two princes and they think they're really cool.
It's ridiculous that people do not think they're really cool.
Oh, they do.
It's a nonsense.
Oh, they do.
But I have to say this. Why are you so against unelected quangos everywhere else, but you're OK with the monarchy?
Because, Mark, it's our way. It's our way.
See past your own nose.
Well, that's very sweet of you on this Sunday morning, and thank you very much indeed, Mark. Well, Mark, they're no fan of the royal family, but I think he's in a tiny, tiny minority. I think the Queen is the most adored human being in the world. Today, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 10:15.
This is LBC.
Do you or your business own a property with planning permission opportunities? If so, Barnes Rofe can help you manage the risks and maximise your gain with joint venture contracts, development partnerships, property SPVs, financing and ownership structures, and property tax advice. At Barnes Rofe, we've already supported our clients through property deals worth millions. So call us today, and you can be next. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for property businesses.
Award-winning Howarth Homes presents another outstanding development, The Dairy, an exciting new collection of just 33 apartments moments from Hillingdon Underground Station and the A40. With completion mid-2020 and the potential to benefit from the surrounding area's future regeneration, there may never be a better time to buy. The Dairy launches off-plan on the 26th of April with prices from as little as $259,995. Discover more at howarthhomes.co.uk.
At the third stroke, the time sponsored by Cunard will be any time you like. Time to stop. Time to relax. Time to indulge. Time to love. Showtime. Time for a voyage with Cunard.
Today on Little Spring Spotters, we're talking weather. And there's only one thing on the nation's mind.
Is it going to be good enough for a barbecue?
Yes! So get that grill going with Lidl's deluxe vintage cheddar beef burgers for just £2.69p.
Lidl, big on quality, little on price.
Subject to availability, NI may vary, selected stores.
Nothing to see here. Just a regular retriever eating his food, doing his thing while you're out doing yours, not raiding the bin, and no little surprises left on the floor. What a good boy. Nothing to see here means nothing to worry about. With the new Hive-View smart indoor camera, you can check on your home from your phone wherever you are. Search Hive to discover more. Hive. Let's get living. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
The Network Q Big Thank You sale is now on. Get an amazing £750 deposit contribution with finance at 9.9% APR representative. Plus, every used Vauxhall we sell comes with 1 year's warranty and 1 year's roadside assist. From the 13th to the 30th of April at your local Vauxhall retailer. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Personal contract purchase, finance subject to status, 18 plus T's and C's apply. Vauxhall Finance, available on selected models at participating retailers.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Is the Commonwealth outdated old hat? Is it the Brits trying to keep on to some last vestige of empire? Or is it the most extraordinary, exciting, diverse group of countries who speak English, have common law, a shared history, and could we really do something very exciting with it for our future? I support the latter idea. I think it's got great potential, and I have no problem with the Queen being at the head of it. I mean, she is actually beloved by a lot of people around the world. And if we didn't have the Queen, we would probably finish up with a political figure. I get on text, the Commonwealth is Britain trying to keep a grip on its colonialist and once powerful past. It is completely pointless. Well, that's a point of view. Andrew says, Nigel, maybe you could twist Trump's arm and get America to join the Commonwealth. Well, this is interesting, Andrew. So Governor Phil Bryant of Mississippi, friend of mine, he was in here on Thursday. We interviewed him. He was here for the Commonwealth Heads of Government Week, as was the governor of Oklahoma, and quite a big American delegation. There is now a Royal Commonwealth Society office open in America. We've had our first event. I say we because I was there as a guest. And interesting, isn't it? Wilbur Ross turned up, and he's in charge of trade for Trump. Betsy DeVos turned up. She's in charge of education. So 2 key cabinet ministers turning up for a Royal Commonwealth Society event. I don't see America becoming a member of the Commonwealth, because I think that would start sort of, accusations of returning to the days of George III or whatever it may be. But I can see America in some way being an associate of it. And Trump instinctively, feels a bit like Churchill used to, that there is something rather special between the English-speaking peoples of the world. I believe the Commonwealth has got great potential. What does Emmanuel from Birmingham think? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigel. I'm quite glad you're bringing up this at a time when head of states of Commonwealth nations have just visited England and the Queen has been able to speak to them.
I tell you, Emmanuel, we have got a rotten phone line. We're going to get rid of you and bring you back on a line that's a little bit clearer. Loic is calling from Paris. Good morning, Loic.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, thank you. So, am I barking mad to think that the Commonwealth has got some real potential for the future?
Absolutely not. And I think the Commonwealth is actually the key to success for Britain post-Brexit.
Explain.
Although Britain's had a regrettable past with it, not supporting the human rights abuses that have gone on in Commonwealth countries, especially in Africa, in the past, it is definitely going to be a way for Britain to develop its economy and, in turn, to help develop the economies of these countries. As free trade is the best kind of international aid. Well,
this is interesting, Loic, isn't it? Because, of course, many of these Commonwealth countries, are relatively poor countries. And, of course, for them, selling their products to us is very, very difficult because of something called the Common External Tariff. The European Union makes trade with these countries very difficult. And that is what lots of people last night were talking about, the potential to bring down those trade barriers.
Absolutely. Tariffs are a prevention to development. Tariffs prevent economic development for poorer countries. They favour the European Union. Removing these trade tariffs will be able to help us have free trade with these countries, where they'll be able to sell their products to us, which in turn will help them get money, get economic growth, and potentially have stammer off immigration to our country, because they won't have to leave their country to come to ours.
Well, that's an argument, isn't it? That the more a poor country develops, the fewer people actually want to leave it, and that is absolutely right. Look, Mark before the break, his biggest criticism was that the unelected monarch was at the head of it. How do you feel about that?
I am a strong fan of the monarchy. I believe the power of the monarchy is not to be underestimated for the power that she removes. I think it would be terrible to have a prime minister be at the head of the Commonwealth, changing every few years or every few months, as it's been in the last few days.
And it would politicise it, wouldn't it?
It would absolutely politicise it. Yeah. Having the Queen, having a stable figurehead, spearhead through the Commonwealth that everyone can recognise, everyone can agree on, is absolutely great and valuable and should not be underestimated.
Terrific. Loic, have a great day in Paris. Thank you. Don from Herne Hill says we're part of the US empire. Well, I don't think we are quite part of the US empire, but they are a very, very important, very, very important ally who a strong Prime Minister will occasionally say no to if it doesn't actually suit us. The Commonwealth is not a separate layer of government ruling over individual countries. The EU is. I agree with that, Tony, entirely. I'd hate to see the Commonwealth start to turn into the European Union and start to force its member states to start harmonising and homogenising. I would hate that. Let's go back to Emmanuel in Birmingham. Good morning again.
Good morning, Nigel. Sorry about the bad line.
That's better. That's better. Right. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I think the Commonwealth at the moment is it's not fit for purpose because of its hypocrisy, Nigel.
Yeah.
Nigel, you're having a Commonwealth known as a gentleman's club where you have heads of states who have taken upon themselves to kill, maim, abduct, and even sacrifice their own country's worth to remain in power, and they parade the corridors of the Commonwealth in the presence of the Queen. I think it is shameful, appalling, and disgraceful. Nigel, let me take the example of Southern Cameroon, the former British Cameroon, which to many people in this country don't even know it used to be part of the British Empire. Since we're talking Commonwealth, which used to be the British Empire, which we're celebrating a common law, a common language. But do you know at this particular moment, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Patricia Scotland, visited Cameroon with a crisis that is going on there with over 65,000 Southern Cameroonians reported to be in Nigeria as refugees, and some equally in this country. And the head of and the Secretary General of the Commonwealth is unable to address this. She visited Cameroon. People's houses are being burnt down. People are fleeing into bushes. We have unaccompanied minors in Nigeria at the moment who are running away from the crisis in the former British
Emmanuel, I am aware of real problems there. But isn't the point that, you know, whether it was South Africa during apartheid or Zimbabwe under Mugabe, the Commonwealth does suspend membership of countries that it thinks are behaving very badly?
No, it hasn't. I mean, we've written letters as the Southern Cameroons Committee in the United Kingdom. We've written letters upon letters to the Commonwealth asking them to address it. And what they told us, Nigel, I want you to ask this question to Patricia Scotland. She said the root causes of the problem in this Commonwealth country has to be addressed, and she's never been bold enough.
Emmanuel, you're being. I can tell you're very passionate. You're being very specific. I myself have received letters about the South Cameroon situation. I don't know. I just don't know. I can't comment on how bad the situation is. I hear what you have to say, but I would argue that, of course, within the Commonwealth, we're not going to say that every country is perfect, but it is a great, great way of getting people together to discuss these problems. Emmanuel, I thank you for your passion. Natalie is calling from Brighton. Good morning, Natalie.
Good morning. Tony Blair goaded Mugabe in 2003, and that was the end of Zimbabwe in the Commonwealth. And that was 15 years ago. And the Commonwealth, all the Commonwealth people, as somebody just said, have one communal language, which is English.
Yep.
And all the stepchildren are cousins. All the stepchildren of Britain are cousins. These are, I see, as the Commonwealth. And yesterday, Boris Johnson said that Zimbabwe is welcome to rejoin the Commonwealth as long as it has free and fair elections. And yesterday, being the Queen's birthday, I told everybody in Zimbabwe, and they all sent back messages to the Queen. And the one that really got to me was an old man who said, "She is still my girl."
That's very nice, isn't it? Natalie, tell me, as somebody that comes from the Commonwealth, do you feel it is like an extended family?
Yes, I do.
You really do?
We are the stepchildren. We are treated like the stepchildren.
Yeah.
Yes, no, we are definitely part of the Commonwealth. And half of Zimbabwe are so happy now that we are welcome to go back in. But the people who don't want Mnangagwa in, they are irate because they have been window dressing with bullet trains and all sorts, while Mnangagwa has been doing the groundwork, digging in the dirt with the British government. And now Boris has said, no, you're very welcome to come back into the Commonwealth, provided you have free and fair elections, which Mnangagwa is determined to have.
Nope.
And he's invited anybody and everybody who wants to go and see the elections to go there.
Natalie, great call. Thank you. Natalie there, feeling actually that those countries are like the stepchildren. Interesting. It won't stay that way forever. It will evolve. Could it be something very exciting? What does Jason in Sutton think? Does the Commonwealth have real potential for the future, Jason?
Not in the near future, or probably the medium-term future, I don't think so, no. I mean, you've been banging on for years about the Commonwealth being the saviour of the British economy post-Brexit.
No, I've never said that, but I do think there's potential there. Now, obviously most of those countries are quite a lot poorer than us, but they do have very high growth rates.
Well, let's put it into perspective. The average price of a car that's exported from the United Kingdom is £20,600.
Yeah.
The average GDP per capita within the Commonwealth is $3,500 per year. Now, it's even less than that if you take out Australia and Canada. How many cars at £20,000 a year do you think we're going to be able to export to the Commonwealth? We don't make products in the UK to be able to export to these countries. We make luxury products to sell to people like...
we do sell Jaguars. We do sell Jaguars and Bentleys and cars like that to India in an ever-growing number, don't we?
We do, but when you compare it to the amount of exports that we sell to the European Union, where they've got a GDP per capita in excess of $32,000, that's more than 10 times the amount of the Commonwealth.
Well, Jason, I mean, look, we do 40% of our overseas business is done at the moment with European Union countries. But 60% is done with the rest of the world, despite the fact we've not been able to have especially good trade relations with them. I'm not arguing against doing trade with Europe and saying we have to go for the Commonwealth. All I'm arguing is that in terms of our global influence, in terms of a club that brings people together, I think the Commonwealth's got some value. Jason, I thank you. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 10:30 and time for the news with Philip Chryssikos.
The Health Secretary is accusing social media companies of turning a blind eye to the harmful effects their platforms have on young people. Jeremy Hunt has given the likes of Facebook and Twitter a week to say what they're doing to deal with the problem. The Shadow Foreign Secretary is calling for Amber Rudd to resign as Home Secretary over the Windrush scandal. Emily Thornberry says there's something rotten at the heart of government. David Weir has won the wheelchair race of the London Marathon for the 8th time. It's as thousands of other competitors take part in what's expected to be the warmest London Marathon in its 38-year history. Half an hour ago, the Queen started the main race from 29 miles away at Windsor Castle. LBC weather, humid with warm sunshine across the southeast this morning, cloudy and fresh elsewhere, showery rain across the west, moving to the southeast this afternoon, a high of 24 degrees.
LBC Travel, the London Marathon continues, so road closures are in place across the route. In Greenwich and Blackheath, the roads will reopen around lunchtime, followed by the rest of South East London by 4 o'clock this afternoon. In East London and along the river through the city and Westminster, roads are expected to be open by 7 o'clock this evening. For full details of the closures, go to our website, lbc.co.uk. Also, the planned strike affecting DLR services is off, so extra trains will be running for the marathon. And on the M25 clockwise in Essex, 2 out of the 4 lanes are closed on the QE2 bridge. That's because of a police investigation. There were queues from junction 30 for the A13 now. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
From the age of 3, young Mozart would watch his sister play the harpsichord with their father, mesmerized by the sound. An early obsession from which his love of music blossomed. At Darwood & Tanner, we believe obsession is a good thing. It's what motivates us to create the perfect smile for every patient, day after day. Darwood & Tanner, your smile is our healthy obsession. Visit darwoodandtanner.co.uk.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper. And this weekend in life, our inspirational lifestyle supplement.
There's me, Dr. Michael Mosley, with my new 5-2 diet plan. I've revised and updated the diet that's helped so many people lose weight to make it easier than ever. With brand new recipes and clever tweaks to help you slim down for summer. You could lose up to 2 stone in just 12 weeks with my new improved 5-2 diet plan.
Only inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
The Network Q Big Thank You sale is now on. Get an amazing £750 deposit contribution with finance at 9.9% APR representative. Plus, every used Vauxhall we sell comes with 1 year's warranty and 1 year's roadside assist. From the 13th to the 30th of April at your local Vauxhall retailer. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Personal contract purchase, finance subject to status, 18 plus T's and C's apply. Vauxhall Finance, available on selected models at participating retailers.
On a travel pack tailor-made holiday, you get to see the very best of the world. Tour the famous Route 66, the spectacular Canadian Rockies. Experience the magic and history of India, the wilds of Africa, or the exotic Far East. Start your journey with Travel Pack. For amazing prices on your tailor-made holiday of a lifetime, call Travel Pack today on 0208 903 9999 or visit travelpack.com. Atoll Protected.
Come and experience Lebanese dining at Marouche Restaurants. Try some of our amazing dishes, kafta dipped in a delicious hummus, or a colourful meze, complemented by a robust Lebanese red. With live music and traditional belly dancing, enjoy an atmosphere to match the food's rich and distinctive flavours. Go to marouche.com to find out more. Marouche Restaurants, the finest Lebanese food across London.
Do you hear that? That's the unmistakable sound of cashback. Do you hear that? That's the sound of cashback too. There it is again. Listen.
Earn money back on every pound spent at places like petrol stations, supermarkets, or local restaurants with your American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. No annual fee. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Terms and minimum annual spend applies.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, our 92-year-old Queen is a very hard-working woman. Not only a late night for her last night, finishing up on the stage at the Royal Albert Hall at this big Commonwealth party to celebrate her birthday, but this morning she pressed the button to start the London Marathon. 41,000 people taking part and forecast to be the hottest marathon ever. Now, there were, to the relief of runners, some big thunderstorms in London overnight. It has brought the temperatures down, but we're told by the middle of the day it'll be 23 degrees C. That's 73.4 Fahrenheit. So, and that will set the record. The previous hottest was 22.7. So the weather, I'm guessing, is a huge issue. But let's find out what's going on. Let's ask Holly Jones, LBC's reporter down in Greenwich. Good morning, Holly.
Good morning, Nigel. Well, as you say, it is a very hot and sunny day, but the good thing is it means there's lots of spectators out, so the atmosphere is incredible already. Just here at the start of the race, I saw all the runners go off, and you mentioned, that hot weather. People are being told to take it easy, and especially if you're wearing a costume, you are being asked to think twice. I have seen some interesting ones. There's someone dressed as a pint of beer. Scooby-Doo ran past me earlier, and there's one woman doing it on stilts. On stilts, yeah. She set off earlier, so she's going to do the whole 26 miles on stilts. So absolutely incredible. And, just running it itself is, an incredible feat, but actually to do it in some of these outfits that people do on a hot day, people are being told, take it easy, slow down if you need to.
Say, Holly, it sounds bonkers to me, but there we are. And have all the runners started now?
Yeah, everyone's starting. I'm at the start in Greenwich now, and there's still lots of people coming back. I think it takes quite a while for everyone to come through, because, as I say, 41,000 people is a record amount of people this year. And there's huge crowds out, and I'm sure there will be along the way. Everyone says London Marathon is the marathon to do if you want to see those crowds, and it keeps people going.
I'll tell you the odd thing. Normally, with any big sporting event, whether it's the 1,500 metres in the Olympics or whatever it is, all we talk about is who's going to win, who's the favourite. It seems, maybe I've got this wrong, but it seems to me with the London Marathon that no one actually cares who wins.
Well, I think if you're probably into athletics, you might have a bit of a keener eye on who actually wins. But really for me, and I've covered this a few years in a row now, it's really about people coming together and showing what they can do, and really that support and coming together for an amazing day out. And, the sun's shining here, people have come out in their droves to support, and I think that's what it is really about. It's just providing that, for people and running for charities as well.
Well, we are, today we're debating the Commonwealth and the Queen being the head of it. Were there big screens? Could you see the Queen pressing this button when it all started?
I believe it was shown on a screen just sort of further round, and the national anthem played, so it's a sort of very patriotic start to it. And I think people really enjoyed the fact. And as you say, her birthday yesterday, it's been a big weekend of celebrations for Her Majesty.
Absolutely. Holly Jones, thank you very much indeed. Have fun down there in Greenwich. Well, I'm guessing that Mark, our Republican from earlier, he will now be spitting his coffee out, won't he? I'm sorry, there's an awful lot of the Queen around this weekend, and she is enormously popular. I'm going to ask Mayanja in Belfast what the Commonwealth means to him.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
All right, my name is Afazil, and
originally I come from a country called Uganda, and it has been part of the Commonwealth. We are colonized by the British and that kind of stuff. But you talked about Commonwealth countries being poor. I think these countries are not poor. The countries are rich. They are rich in minerals. They are rich in agriculture. The weather is good, a lot of water resources, and most of these resources are actually untapped. So what happens is, the problem with most of these Commonwealth nations is leadership. There's poor leadership, there is poor governance. So as a matter of fact, it has led to the underutilization of such kind of resources, and the people have not been able to benefit. So I think at this point in time, the Commonwealth, Britain leaving the European Union, it is a very good opportunity and a very good chance for Britain to benefit in these untapped resources, as well as for African nations to also align more with Britain and leave countries like China, because China is coming into these Commonwealth countries because Britain had underrated these countries. Britain had underrated...
Oh, well, listen, we did more than underrate them. We actually willfully turned our backs on them back in 1973. The very countries who in 2 world wars had sent their people, stood by us, helped us. It was a terrible betrayal in many ways.
Exactly, because we were left with no option. Because, I, for one, I would rather align with Britain than align with China, because you don't know, the Chinese policies and, what they are coming with in Africa. And you're seeing a lot of Chinese actually coming up in Africa, creating a lot of, bringing a lot of trucks and bringing a lot of machinery, drilling oil and doing all that kind of stuff. Because it is our leadership, Britain turns the back on these countries, and as a matter of fact, these countries were left with no option.
And tell me finally, what do you think about the Queen being the head of the Commonwealth?
I think the Queen is, she's an inspirational figure for the Commonwealth, and people in where I come from, especially in Uganda, they think highly about the Queen, and because these Commonwealth countries also have monarchies, or they have kingdoms, and they have kings and queens and stuff like that. So we highly respect the Queen, and we would like her to. Because recently, whenever Chogam was held in Uganda in 2007, when she visited our country, Uganda, people were happy to see the Queen, and everyone was excited.
No, I mean, the way she's travelled around these Commonwealth countries, she loves it. And of course, Prince Charles, actually, he has put a huge amount in. It's going to be very tough for him, though, when his turn comes to take over, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be very tough. But I think he has been well introduced into. He's been moving places, and I think he's also well versed with the Commonwealth. He has been meeting these leaders. He hasn't been at the back of the thing. So I think he also understands, how
good. Well, a very positive assessment there. Thank you very much indeed. I must admit, it was a week after the referendum. I was in the car just outside Croydon. We stopped. I got out. I went into the shop to buy something. I came out and there was a car there. Bloke was filling up, and sitting in the front seat was a woman. There were 3 kids in the back between about sort of 8 and 15. And they saw me, and she sort of leaned out the window and started screaming, and she got out the window, and the kids all got out, and we all had to have photographs, you see. And they were, Mum and Dad had come to this country from Jamaica, and the kids had been born in this country. And she was a larger-than-life figure, big personality. And she said to me, now we've got Brexit, do you think our countries could become friends again? And that was volunteered to me by a Jamaican-born woman on the forecourt of a petrol station in Croydon. And it's interesting. There is actually, amongst people middle-aged and older from Commonwealth countries, there is a great sense of resentment that we chose the European project over them. And despite that, we're still together in the Commonwealth. So if we've got through a very difficult period like this, hey, we could be headed for some very exciting times. James on Facebook says, trade with the Commonwealth countries is great. Frank says, the countries in the Commonwealth actually want to be a part of it. It's not colonialism, as they have the freedom to leave if they want to. Frank, you're absolutely right. They're all there as independent sovereign countries. And interestingly, they all have equal say. Regardless whether they represent 20,000 people or 1 billion people, they all have an even say at these Commonwealth conferences. I've got a phone call from the Commonwealth. Peter is calling from St Kitts in the Caribbean. I can't believe it. Hello, Peter.
And good day to you, sir.
Hi. What time of the day is it there?
It's, well, you know, we're 5 hours different to
Just
you, aren't
5,
we? Or
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
It's quarter to 6 here in the Caribbean.
Yeah, so is this after a late night out, Peter, or are you just up early?
Well, you know how I'd rather not go into that, to tell you the truth.
Now tell me, what does the Commonwealth, what does the Queen mean in St Kitts?
Well, listen, let me tell you everything. I can assure you of that. Everybody loves it, and they've got the Queen's birthday coming up and that sort of thing. I mean, we have all the time, we have things with regards to it. I've lived all over the Commonwealth, from Hong Kong, Singapore, Seychelles, across Africa, into the Caribbean and all that sort of thing. And everywhere you go in the Commonwealth, they love the Queen.
They do.
I mean, you know, these people that talk also, I heard somebody just say, I mean, so many people saying so many ridiculous things, like, for instance, about cars, selling cars. Everybody in these places owns a car. They're desperate to have a car.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, you know, and I mean, okay, so we've got old things like Morris Minors and Mini Mokes and things like that. But, you know, at the same token, they love to have a car. And I mean, they love minis, honestly.
That's interesting.
Peculiar.
Interesting. Why?
You know, I mean, you know,
is it they're former colonies, they're now in the Commonwealth, but what you're saying, they still like some of the British symbolism?
Yeah, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Here in the Caribbean, there's pictures of the royal family all over the place, honestly, in people's private houses. And, you know, I wrote to Ted Heath, that complete dingbat, when I was in Seychelles at the time.
Yep.
I outlined every single Commonwealth country, what they had got and what they could do, you know, by us staying with them rather going into Europe with the people that don't like us anyway.
Some people would say that, Peter.
So anyway, I got a reply back from him. I went through, told them everything that every Commonwealth country has got. And, you know, the Commonwealth has got everything.
So, Peter, great future for the Commonwealth, in your opinion?
Absolutely. We need to go with them. Let me tell you, the vast majority of them are really pleased that Brexit is happening.
I know they are. I know they are. Peter, great call. Have a fabulous day on St Kitts. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's now 10:46.
This is LBC.
When the beast from the east struck, snow fell, temperatures plummeted, and the country ground to a halt. But Swale Heating leapt into action. Over the week, we helped over 10,000 homes stay warm and safe. To find out more about our boiler installations and maintenance schemes, visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
We've been thinking about the nuclear family, that vision of mum, dad and their 2.4 children, and how times have changed. How we're now living longer and our kids are leaving home later. So we thought, with all this change, shouldn't we change the way we think about mortgages? So we now cater for all types of family and are trying to turn Generation Rent into Generation Buy. Mortgages for how life is now. NatWest. We are what we do.
Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Hey, Sarah, did you see our street in the Admiral ad last night?
Yeah, we're the inspiration for multi-cover insurance.
Car and home on one policy.
And another great deal for customers. But seriously, it's a lifesaver.
Oh, I know. I did my car, Rob's car and the house. It was multi-cover deals all round.
Ooh, that deserves a celebration. Cup of tea? Something stronger.
Multi-cover your home and cars at admiral.com.
Someone's going to be very happy that you discovered London luxury chauffeuring. Enjoy a BMW, Mercedes or Rolls-Royce with massage seats, multimedia systems and brand new Apple TV. Whatever the occasion, think London luxury chauffeuring. Make your first booking and get your second one free at llccars.co.uk. London luxury chauffeuring. Everything you need for your journey. Conditions apply.
What a difference a day makes. 24 little hours.
After 24 hours with the new BMW, you won't want to give it back. Feel the difference yourself. BMW 24-hour test drives. Book yours now. Search BMW 24 hours. Subject to status and retailer availability. Participating retailers only.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
53 countries were represented last night in the Royal Albert Hall to celebrate the Queen's 92nd birthday. She is the head of the Commonwealth. It is a remarkable organisation. It has its problems. This week there's been quite a discussion about the fact that 37 of the Commonwealth countries still have laws on gays that some would think are out-fashioned and old-dated. So these countries aren't all equivalent. Some are relatively rich, some are relatively poor. But the commonality is the use of English, common law in nearly every case, and a shared history together. I think we can make an awful lot of it, and interestingly, the Americans now showing interest in the Commonwealth. On Twitter, Justin says, even us Americans revere the Queen. There is a bit of envy for the institution Her Majesty represents. Well, I tell you who is a huge fan of the Queen. I know, because I've sat and talked to him about it, and that's Donald J. Trump. He thinks the Queen is absolutely amazing. And you know what? Most of us do. And at some point in the future, and don't forget, her mother lived to 101, who knows, the Queen could live a very long time still. But at some point in time, when Charles becomes the head of the Commonwealth, boy, that is going to be a very difficult act to follow. And lots of you texting and tweeting about the differences between the Commonwealth and the European Union. If the elites had any brains, they would have developed the Commonwealth, not gone with the EU. We love each other as neighbours, but we are not the same country, which is their ultimate goal. Commonwealth, not EU, says Tony. With the erosion of our freedoms and the demonisation of anyone who expresses pride in a nationhood, HM the Queen and the monarchy represent something for us to believe in as British people. Do you know, Dirk, and thanks for that, actually the Queen, why is she so popular? Well, I think it's because she's been so honest, she's been so faithful, she's worked as the most incredible servant for 70 years and frankly never put a foot wrong. And in a world of a lot of problems, she represents, I think, something actually rather wholesome. People like that and they want that. But the amazing thing is to see the popularity of William and Harry. It is just extraordinary. You know, I went to the Westminster Abbey Field of Remembrance just ahead of Remembrance Sunday last year, and to all the old soldiers, you know, Harry is a bit of a hero. They all want to see him. They all want to be photographed with him. And when he came on the stage last night at the Royal Albert Hall, all the teenagers started screaming. So we've got these two celebrity princes. I mean, I can't think there's been any moment in our history when the monarchy has been more popular than it is right at this moment in time. Adam is calling from Madrid in Spain. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. Do you know what? I really, really enjoyed myself last night, Adam. And as I say, I thought the Queen had gone, but then suddenly when she appeared on the stage, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. I loved it.
Yeah, she's marvellous, isn't she?
I really genuinely think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to say, I've heard a few of your listeners calling in and saying that the Commonwealth is an outdated vestige of empire.
Yep.
And, you know, we should feel guilty for having gone there, having colonised these countries in the first place. I lived in Dubai for 10 years, and in Dubai, a significant part of the workforce are Indians.
Yep.
From all over India, and they don't have this feeling because they don't have a chip on the shoulder about us anymore. They've moved on. They're a huge, independent, proud nation, and they're quite happy to be in an organisation with us as equals. You know, they don't have this idea that, you know, the British came and a lot of them are quite happy we were there, happier that we left. But, you know, they feel genuine affection, perhaps not for the UK as an ex-colonial power, but British culture, the language, they're delighted to the English speakers, helps them speak to each other.
It is remarkable, Adam, isn't it? That, you know, we were their colonial masters, and I look at the other European countries, and a lot of them have got, I mean, Belgium and the Congo, for example, some pretty bad relationships between those countries, and it is remarkable, this kind of friendship in this club, isn't it?
Well, Belgium is an interesting example because they had Rwanda.
Yep.
And Rwanda has now joined the Commonwealth. You know,
this is a point, Adam.
Left them with a system that encouraged
this is a point
Tutsis to kill each other. They now seem to think that in the Commonwealth there might be some sort of...
I understand, Adam, there are 6 countries queuing up to join the Commonwealth, none of whom were ever part of the British Empire. So it is being seen now around the world as being an organisation with real potential.
That's right. The fact that it grew out of the British Empire is now irrelevant.
Yeah, we've moved on.
It seems to me that it's only people in Britain who seem to...
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Adam, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Have a great day in Madrid. I asked the question earlier for young people, what have you been taught about this? Nothing at all. When I was in school, I can't remember any teacher talking about it. Maybe it was talked about more 50 or 100 years ago. Well, I think 100 years ago, weren't kids painting in bits of the map pink and things like that? I do think the Commonwealth is something that has simply not been discussed very much, and I think now that is going to change. David on Facebook says, I've travelled to 200 countries around the world. Wow. Britain is the best and the Commonwealth is wonderful. Right, well, there you go. Jason is calling from Acton. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am good. So, what do you think of that?
Great.
It does. Is this a colonial sort of throwback, or does it have potential, Jason?
I think there's as a British-born, I'm British-born. My family's from Nigeria. I've got a dual passport, and as a British person, I don't feel comfortable us leaving the European Union. However, as also going back home and going to Nigeria, I see that a lot of people that are Nigerian can call you and maybe argue this point, but I feel that investment in agriculture and pushing forward vocational skills and if we were to go into the Commonwealth and then there's prospects for us to grow agriculture in Nigeria, for us to do business with England, I think there's huge potential there. I feel that in Nigerian culture, we focus too much on a lot. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but a lot on very high academical, what would I call it, like doctors, lawyers, but there's no one really doing agriculture. There's no one really doing carpentry, plumbing, electricity. And I think if we
sort of untapped human resources, then, Jason.
Yeah. I mean, what I do as well, you know, I've bought a few lands in Nigeria to look into business towards agriculture, as well as me working in UK. But again, like I said, Nigel, the reason why I feel a certain way about Brexit is because I want to have freedom to go from from England to Spain to France. I have freedom of movement.
Jason, if you're a law-abiding citizen carrying a legitimate passport, it will still be very, very easy to go to Spain for the weekend or whatever else. I promise you, that is not under threat. Jason, I thank you. Time for one last call on this. Joe is calling from Nantwich. Good morning, Joe.
Nigel, lovely to speak to you again. Nigel, I was born in Trinidad.
Yep.
And I know the potential of the Commonwealth. When you look at the Commonwealth and all the countries in it, you look at Africa, Nigeria, oil. You look at, you've got India and Pakistan out of Asia. In the Caribbean, you've got Brunei as well. In the Caribbean, you've got fruit and abundance and everything. And when you look at Europe, there's 2 countries in the Commonwealth. Now, you've got Cyprus and you've got Malta.
Yep.
Now, it seems to me we've been going to the wrong club. We've been using our pass to go to the wrong club. But we've still got our pass. Let's go to the right club. And the right club is 2.5 billion people with the resources. You take Trinidad, for instance. Last year, they found an enormous amount of oil and gas. Run our pipeline to there, if you like, but the potential there is fantastic.
The untapped potential of many of these Commonwealth countries. But, Joe, let me just put this to you. You know, Peter in Lancashire has texted me, and he says, the Queen is loved and respected. The Queen is the Commonwealth. To what extent is that true, do you think?
No, everything passes down. Everything passes down the line. I'm proud that Prince Charles, that's part of the royal family, they revere the royal family. But not only that, Nigel, I look upon the world like this. I look upon England as the mother, and even America might be the eldest son. But all the other Commonwealth countries are the jewels in our crown, and we've not polish these
It's
jewels.
untapped, isn't it? No, it is.
It's totally.
So, Joe, are you with Brexit coming, with this amazing success of this conference this week, and 1 or 2 arguments, but great success, are you bullish about the future of the Commonwealth?
I've never been more bullish. It's an amazing club. What, you've got 500 people in Europe, and you've got 2.5 billion plus America to go at. We don't need anybody else. Yes, we'll talk to the Chinese as well.
Yeah,
but they're a great country.
But we've got a head start here, haven't we? We've got a head start.
And not only that, Nigel, not only that, can you imagine how frightened our friends in Europe will be if we're going to catch on to the
well, yes, a lot of them. Yeah, I don't think Monsieur Barnier wishes to see us succeed in terms of global trade. Joe, I thank you. Well, Commonwealth immigration was a big issue on the 20th of April 1968 when the Shadow Defence Secretary, Enoch Powell, made a speech in Birmingham. He told his friend before it would go up like a rocket. It was the first time a major politician had spoken out against the establishment consensus on immigration that had been there from both parties since basically the end of World War II. I want to know, what did you take from Powell's speech of 50 years ago? If you think the speech was totally wrong in every way, call me on 0345 6060 973. If you think, well, the language wasn't very nice, but the things in that speech that matter, text to 84850. And if you're younger, tell us, what does Enoch Powell mean to you? Had you ever heard of him before this week? Please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And you can watch us on Facebook. You can comment there too. We're live from London next.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, social media companies have a week to tell the government what they're doing to stop underage children using their platforms. The Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt has written to the likes of Twitter and Facebook, also demanding what they're doing to deal with cyberbullying. Mental health campaigner Natasha Devon has told LBC she welcomes the announcements.
Parents often don't know how damaging social media can be, and we know that social media can have a positive impact as well as a negative one. So I think giving some guidelines to parents about what's appropriate in a public health campaign is actually one of the most proactive things the government can do.
The Home Secretary Amber Rudd is facing calls to resign following the Windrush scandal, including from the Shadow Foreign Secretary. Emily Thornberry says there's something rotten at the heart of government, but former Home Office Minister Norman Baker has told LBC it's the then Home Secretary and now Prime Minister Theresa May who should fall on her swords.
She was the one who introduced it at the Home Office. She was the one who had to go home bans. Amber Rudd and Caroline Noakes, they didn't create the situation. It would be very unfair for them to go in many ways. I think Theresa May needs to make a full personal apology, not an apology on behalf of the government, a personal apology, and say, I was wrong as Home Secretary to do this. That's what needs to happen next.
An international coalition of 35 Catholic organisations is promising to remove its investments from fossil fuels. Almost £8 billion will be withdrawn from companies in the oil, gas and mining industry, joining 60 other Catholic groups that previously decided not to invest in fossils. Today marks 25 years since Stephen Lawrence was murdered while waiting for a bus at Eltham in south-east London. The Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust was set up 5 years later by the 18-year-old's mother, Doreen, to help young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. Sonia Watson is the Trust's chief executive. She's spoken to LBC.
Over 2,000 young people have benefited from the Trust. We have about 300 industry partners who all want to contribute, helping young people who perhaps have been disadvantaged in the past.
Vern Troyer, who played Mini-Me in the Austin Powers films, has died at the age of 49. The cause of his death isn't clear. Austin Powers creator Mike Myers says Vern was a consummate professional. There's been a royal send-off on what's expected to be the warmest London marathon in its 38-year history. The Queen pressed the button to sound that klaxon in Greenwich from 29 miles away at Windsor Castle. Extra ice, water and shower stations have been set up with temperatures expected to reach 24 degrees later. In the last half hour, Britain's David Weir has won his 8th London Marathon title, taking victory in the men's wheelchair race. LBC weather, humid with warm sunshine across the southeast this morning, cloudy and fresh elsewhere, showery rain across the west, moving to the southeast by the afternoon, a high of 24 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
Introducing Benson's Blue Cross Savings Event with savings of up to £200. Our exclusive British-made Silent Night Mirror Pocket Indulgent Divan Bed is now only £749. Plus you can save £200 on our stylish solid wood Venetian bed frame, now £399. Offers available online, in-store or by phone. Interest-free credit available and free delivery on everything. Find the right bed for you and save hundreds of pounds in the Benson's Blue Cross Savings Event. Hurry, must end soon.
LBC Travel, the London Marathon continues, so roads stay closed across the route. In Greenwich and Blackheath, the roads will reopen around midday, followed by all other roads in South East London by 4 o'clock this afternoon. In Docklands, Tower Hamlets, the City and Westminster roads are expected to be open by 7 o'clock this evening. For full details of the closures, go to our website, lbc.co.uk. The planned strike affecting DLR services is off, so extra trains are running for the marathon. And on the M25 clockwise in Essex, 2 out of the 4 lanes stay closed on the QE2 bridge. That's because of a police investigation. It's now taking about half an hour to get through. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
50 years ago, the 20th of April 1968, in a hotel in central Birmingham, Enoch Powell, already a very prominent political figure in this country, gave a speech that was, without doubt, the most divisive speech that's been given in this country in my lifetime. As I was growing up, he was a name that was constantly discussed, and when you heard the name, some people recoiled in horror and said that he'd done huge damage to race relations in this country and made life uncomfortable for many black people. Others thought he was an absolute hero who dared to speak out against the establishment. So he was this hugely divisive figure. And I want to know, what you, as an individual, take from that speech. And if you think it was totally wrong, please call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, the language was pretty extreme, but he did give some warnings about what would happen if we did not get integration right in this country, in which case text to 84850. And any other thoughts on Powell, his legacy? Did, in some ways, Powell's arguments have an influence over our recent Brexit referendum? Let me know what you think. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course, as ever, you can watch us on Facebook Live and comment there too. Well, to help me with this and to get some perspective on who Powell was, because unless you're over 50, you probably don't really remember Enoch Powell being a public figure. But boy, he was a huge public figure for many, many years. To help me with this, I've got today Sir Anthony Selden, political historian, who's written biographies of John Major, Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, and is the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Buckingham. Good morning, Sir Anthony.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Tell us, just imagine for a moment, Sir Anthony, that you're talking to people under the age of 50. Who was Enoch Powell and what was his significance?
Imagine an incredibly brilliant politician. Here was somebody who was the youngest brigadier in the British Army, who was also a brilliant scholar, one of the youngest professors ever in university history, and an astonishing politician who was well known for his rhetoric and for his sharpness of mind. And then in 1968, he made this speech, which, as you say, rewrote the history books. And he rewrote the history books not because of so much what he said, but the way he said it. And he used imagery that didn't so much draw attention to a concern, but inflamed people on both sides. So that in brief is the Enoch Powell potted history.
Yeah, and he now this particular speech, he kind of knew, I think, what he was getting into. Let's just listen, Sir Anthony, to what Powell said very early on in that speech.
I can already hear the chorus of execration. How dare I say such a horrible thing? How dare I stir up trouble and inflame feelings by repeating such a conversation?
So he knew, Sir Anthony, what he was doing, didn't he?
He absolutely knew what he was doing. He talked about setting up a rocket that would change everything, and this rocket wouldn't come down. It would keep up there, and the world would be forever different.
And he, in a sense, because of this speech and the phraseology that he used, that a constituent had said to him that the black man would hold the whip hand over the white man, and then of course it's known as the Rivers of Blood speech. As I look ahead, I am filled with foreboding, like the Roman. I seem to see the River Tiber foaming with much blood. Did he realise, though, that by saying these things he would actually become a political outcast?
I don't expect that he thought he would be forever a marginal figure in British politics thereafter. He was very ambitious.
Yeah.
He had desires to get to the highest office. Having said this, the then Tory leader, Ted Heath, sacked him, and he never again held office in the Tory party, and he broke away and became a maverick for the rest of his life. But, the issue, I think, is that many people in many countries worry about the balance of immigration, and too many, too quickly, can upset the delicate balance in society. Now many reasonable people accept that is a concern, and it was the way that he said it, the highly emotive language, rivers of blood flowing through the streets. It was deliberately incendiary on his part. He thought it was drawing attention to something that he thought politicians were not giving him sufficient creed to, but it hasn't happened. Britain has been a successful multicultural country. There hasn't been the open clashes that he foresaw, and had he made his point in a less emotive way, he might have drawn attention to it in a more reasonable way that would have got decent people of all parties looking at the right rate and the right rate of integration to keep a good balance in society. But he didn't do that, and I think you could say that he caused damage not just to his own career but to the case that he was making.
Well, I felt this because when I started talking about immigration, when we opened up the doors to 8 and then 10 former communist countries, I found arguments that I was making about numbers, integration, arguments that I believed were wholly logical and rational arguments. Actually, to even touch on the subject, I was sort of shouted down as if I dared to do something that was wrong and was bad. And I do wonder, on this question of immigration, whether Powell didn't actually make it harder for people to talk about the very thing that he wanted highlighted.
Well, it's very hard to know the answer whether he did or not. He certainly inflamed the issue, and I think the fact he showed no contrition afterwards did further damage to his cause. He is known to have said that his one regret was not making the speech, but that he didn't quote Virgil, the Latin writer, in the original Latin rather than in English, which is a very sort of flip thing to have said. So he quite possibly did polarize, and having a polarized society is never helpful for logical debate. I mean, there are reasonable people on both sides of this issue, and to respect what the other side says and to listen to the other side and come out with a reasonable way forward would have been a much better way. And it, as you said, Nigel, the country's been changed since because of this extraordinary speech.
Did he make life more difficult for black people living in Britain in 1968?
Well, I would think he did, because he had very large numbers of supporters. There were protests in his favour, and as an integrationist, I can't support that at all. I'm the child of immigrant parents. My grandparents were immigrants, and I think that this was not a reasonable thing to have said. And, it is important in issues that are highly sensitive. So capital punishment is another. It's highly important for politicians to be temperate in the points that they are making. We could see this again over the whole issue of Brexit, where intemperate language was used on both sides. The public deserve and need politicians to be reasoned with them. And if they are themselves going to resort to the language of the street and the pub, they kind of legitimize that, and it doesn't help clarity to emerge.
Yeah, and yet he was this enormously civilized person as well, wasn't he? And
this is a very great paradox, Nigel. He was incredibly learned. He was not a...
He loved music, didn't he? And
he loved music, mind you, to lots of fascists, but he was a very cultured person, and was a very cultured family man, had a lot of friends.
And quite liberal, Sir Anthony, wasn't he? Quite liberal on social issues.
He was very liberal. He was very liberal on social issues, very liberal on economic issues, in the sense of being very extraordinarily pro-free market. So he was one of those cases, if you like, one of these very brilliant mavericks who somehow just didn't fit in, and who felt never understood by the establishment, was outcast, and that can happen to these people. And sometimes one feels what one's left with politics for those people who, who are more conventional minded, but one can understand why that is, because they're saying things that seem to ordinary people to be much more acceptable. So there you are.
No, thank you very much, Sir Anthony Selden, for talking us through Powell. And as Sir Anthony says, he was an utterly brilliant man in so many ways. And for me, I was a big supporter of Powell. I was a big supporter of what he stood for in terms of economics. He was a monetarist before Milton Friedman. He was a monetarist before Margaret Thatcher had even thought about this stuff. And on the European question, he was wholly opposed to us joining the common market. He maintained that view for the whole of his life. In fact, he and Tony Benn were the people that I listened to and looked to and thought about their words before I got involved in politics myself. And in a minute, I'll tell you about a very interesting personal reminiscence of myself and Enoch Powell. But for now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC, and it's 11:15.
Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
I think we've been feeble on Syria, to be honest, and I've thought that for a long time. When chemical weapons are used, I think it behoves the world to respond, and when chemical weapons are used on the streets of our own country, I think it behoves us to respond.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Nothing to see here. Just a regular retriever eating his food, doing his thing while you're out doing yours, not raiding the bin. And no little surprises left on the floor. What a good boy. Nothing to see here means nothing to worry about. With the new HiView smart indoor camera, you can check on your home from your phone wherever you are. Search Hive to discover more. Hive. Let's get living. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Ryanair, 30 years of low fares with over 200 destinations to choose from and great on-time flights. Isn't it time you booked your next break? Book your trip today on Ryanair.com or on the app with up to 20% off 1 million seats. Ryanair, low fares made simple. Limited availability. See Ryanair.com.
Want to show your lawn some love? At B&Q, do it for less with a McAllister 1200-watt lawnmower. Was £69, now £56. 14-kilogram aftercut all-in-one for just £17. And Verve Clear Away bag for £3.47. So for low prices on garden project essentials, you can do it when you B&Q it.
If you own a Swiss watch and it's time to sell it, speak to watches.co.uk. The whole process runs like clockwork. Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega and more. It only takes a couple of ticks and we pay immediately. Or if you just fancy a change, we could take yours in part exchange. From time on your hands to money in your pocket, it couldn't be easier with watches.co.uk. The pre-owned Swiss watch specialist.
Do you hear that? That's the unmistakable sound of cashback. Do you hear that? That's the sound of cashback too. There it is again. Listen.
Earn money back on every pound spent at places like petrol stations, supermarkets or local restaurants with your American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. No annual fee. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Terms and minimum annual spend applies.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper. And this weekend in life, our inspirational lifestyle supplement.
There's me, Dr. Michael Mosley, with my new 5-2 diet plan. I've revised and updated the diet that's helped so many people lose weight to make it easier than ever. With brand new recipes and clever tweaks to help you slim down for summer. You could lose up to 2 stone in just 12 weeks with my new improved 5-2 diet plan.
Only inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
Hi, I'm Paul Devin, CEO from WG for Business. A single source solution for office supplies, furniture, print and business services. If you're a company director or partner, we could save you as much as 45% on your office supplies and services with our comprehensive and free corporate spend audit. Find out more at wgforbusiness.com or text the word audit to 87007. That's 87007.
Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
Enoch Powell's speech of 1968 says things that are important. He talks about integration. He talks about numbers, controlling immigration being the right thing to do to have an integrated society. He makes predictions about what the numbers will be in this country by the year 2000 that proved to be remarkably accurate. There were really important things that Powell was trying to say in this speech, but he'd tried a few months before in Walsall. He'd given the same speech, and it hadn't really become the big issue that he thought it would be. So this time, he decided he would use language that would get it onto the front pages, and that's why, we played that clip earlier. Even now I can hear the howls of execration. How could I say such a horrible thing? He knew what he was doing, but at the end, when he uses this classical analogy about the Romans standing on the banks of the River Tiber, I think he just assumed that everybody would have read the Aeneid and would have understand what he was going to do. I think that the violence of his language damaged his case, damaged his career, to the extent that he was only ever an outsider from that moment on, when had he not given the speech using those words, I think he would have become the Prime Minister. I really do think he would have succeeded Heath and not Thatcher. But he also made it very difficult to have a rational, open debate about immigration for all the decades to come. And I know that, I think, probably more than anybody living in this country today. I was trying to talk about opening up the doors and being sensible and having control. And as soon as you did it, you were cast into this bracket. You're a Powellite, and therefore much hate must be directed at you. But despite all of those things, despite my criticisms of that speech, I'm a Powell fan, make no bones about it. And what he said about the European Union was right. I chauffeured Enoch Powell to his last ever public engagement. It was at Newbury Racecourse back in 1992. He sat in the front, the wartime brigadier, and as we arrived at the gates, there were some communist protesters who smashed the back of my car in with a big wooden stave. I was absolutely shaking like a leaf driving this car, not knowing what to do. But the wartime brigadier, talk about stiff upper lip, was completely unmoved by all of it. So I did meet him. I met him several times, and he was, for me, an inspirational figure when it came to the need for our country to be a self-governing, independent nation. So that's where I am on this, but I'm critical of the language that was used in this speech. Lots of emotion out there. Steve in London says, Powell insulted the British public by assuming that all Britons were half-wit racists. He was wrong, not brilliant. But Mark in Oxford says, Enoch was right. The attempt to forcibly integrate disparate cultures won't work. And that Enoch was right, Enoch was wrong argument, we still hear it being talked about today. Manjit is calling from Peterborough. Good morning.
Morning, Nigel. There's Manjit.
Manjit, right now, tell me, Powell's speech, what does it mean? Was it a very divisive thing for the ethnic communities to listen to this?
Right. Okay, I was 9 years old. I'm a British-born Sikh, first generation, now with children second and third generation.
Yep.
And I remember the shockwaves it caused. I was too young to understand. But in the Asian community, we were told, don't go out of the house, don't go to school, mum, don't go to town, we'll be deported any minute, there'll be gangs on the streets roaming for us. So it did send shockwaves in the Asian community. However, he never mentioned Asians. He was on about the black community rather than the Asians. But the ironic thing was, he was actually liked by the Asian community, Enoch Powell, because he had a great affiliation with India.
He loved India, didn't he?
He loved India. He was fluent in Urdu, Punjabi. He knew about Sikhism. He knew about Islam. He knew about Buddhism. He ate curry 3 times a week. He was so much liked until this speech came out. So there's quite a paradox there with what he said and what happened, you know. And that's what was so hard for the Asian community at the time to understand. But the way he said it, and at the time, you've got to take into consideration. And I think the Rivers of Blood speech, what he made was, he was there, and he wasn't a racist. I don't believe he was a racist, unlike Mrs. Alibi Brown, who was on the Ian show a few days ago, you know, which I don't know why you get that woman on anyway. But
we've all got different opinions, you know, and she's never scared of expressing hers.
Yeah, but her opinion is the only one that matters for the Asian community. I don't think she represents the Asian community. Sorry, to get back to the Rivers of Blood speech.
Yeah.
Powell was in India during partition. Unfortunately, the British caused a partition, and he saw communities turn on communities, and there was mass slaughter.
It scared him, didn't it?
Both sides.
Yep.
He saw that. He witnessed that. He was there. And I think that's what he was trying to bring over here to say, look, I don't want this to happen over here. I don't want communities to turn on one community or two communities to turn on each other. So he was trying to maybe pre-warn or preempt or whatever he was trying to do. I think that's where the Rivers of Blood came into it, sort of thing, you know. So
yeah.
He was a contradictive man, but in some aspects he was right.
And your parents, you know, as first generation migrants living in Britain, I mean, what did they think at the time?
Well, my father actually liked Powell because he remembered him from India, and he said there's a famous story that Enoch Powell refused to go into an officer's mess because his captain was an Indian, wasn't allowed to come into the British officer's mess,
right.
And he refused to go in. He said, "I'm not going to go. If my captain cannot come in with me, I will not go in." And he refused to go in there. So I don't know where the racism comes in. You know, he was a complex man. His language was inflammatory, yes, but sometimes when you want to get your message across, you have to...
Well, that's exactly what Powell was trying to do, wasn't it? He was trying to get his message heard. But, you know, when he used phrases like match to gunpowder and rivers of blood, he went over the top. Great call. Thank you very much indeed. Really, and this is interesting. Powell did love India, and he used to broadcast on the BBC World Service in Urdu. So he learnt the Indian languages, he loved the culture, and as we've just heard, he had curry 3 times a week. Terry from Worthing says, it says something that a speech made 50 years ago by a man who left politics 31 years ago and who died 21 years ago is still being discussed. Well, Terry, the reason it's still being discussed is many of those big themes, the big themes that Powell talked about, government borrowing, EU membership, migration controls, many of those themes are still being discussed today with much the same urgency they were back in 1968. James is calling from Barnes. Good morning, James.
Oh, good morning, Nigel. Yes. Well, following the last call, he made a lot of the gentleman before made a lot of the points I was going to make. I actually was visiting Wolverhampton quite regularly at the time, and my family knew him very well, and. There's a story behind this. I mean, he was a great friend, as has been said, of the Sikh community, but at that time, there was a political movement for turbans to be worn rather than the standard uniform on the Wolverhampton buses. And I know this sounds a bit perhaps a bit of an aside, but it was actually very central because...
Well, no, James, actually today we discuss face coverings and say these are very similar arguments in a way, aren't they?
Point was that it was coming to the very core of 2 things that Powell stood for. Enoch Powell was a great believer in the British national identity, and he was very afraid that we were going to have this multicultural identities, which he saw, as the gentleman has said just previously, that this would foster abrasion between the races, and he had seen, you know, the Rivers of Blood thing. He'd actually, you know, not actually the experience that had happened in partition was Rivers of Blood, and he was desperately afraid that we were going to get a lot of friction between different identities, cultural identities, which would cause havoc in the future.
And of course, he also, James, at the time, was witnessing some of the disturbances taking place in America.
Well, yes, of course. All these things were the thing. But I mean, what the point was that the great thing about Enoch Powell was he was first and foremost. People say he was a career man. He was a constituency MP first and foremost, absolutely. And he would have had a great following. And the man who actually, this is very, very interesting actually, the man who actually started off the political protest about the turbans in Wolverhampton was a friend of his. Turned out, and Enoch Powell actually got his son over here, and he said very recently, he said Enoch Powell was most definitely not a racist.
Yeah, a lot of people who knew him say that, and yet for those that don't know him, as I say, you mention his name and they recoil with horror and say that he was racist and bigoted and all the rest of it. James, thank you for your insight. Great call. Floyd is calling from Romford. Good morning, Floyd.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well. So, Powell, 50 years on, right or wrong? What does he mean to you?
Well, it's interesting. I'm born and bred in Wolverhampton. I'm of Afro-Caribbean origin. I'm also a political scientist as well, to throw that in. And it's very interesting because there's a story that no one knows, very few people know. Nearly every Sunday or every other Sunday, Enoch Powell used to go to a Jamaican lady's home for dinner. He was very, very close to quite a number of people in the African-Caribbean community. And obviously his speech had massive repercussions. I was born in 1968, so clearly I don't remember it. But I know, in fact, I was speaking to my mother about 3 weeks ago about Enoch. I was in Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
And she was just telling me, Sundays he used to go to this particular lady's home, the grandmom of a friend of mine, for dinner. And they were very, very close. They lived very, very well together. And then when the speech came out and the years following after that, there was obviously some division in terms of their relationship. But prior to that, they were very, very close. They lived almost like brothers.
Those that say, Floyd, those that say Powell's a racist, etc., don't actually know the man. He wasn't a racist. You're absolutely right about that. But what he feared was large-scale immigration and a clash of cultures. That was what he was scared of, wasn't he?
That's right. And I think that the point that you made earlier is informative because also one of your callers that politicians need to use temperate language because if they begin to use the language of the streets, it then legitimizes caustic and coarse language and behaviours, and that's the problem that he causes.
So ultimately, Floyd, a very clever man, but a man who made a big mistake here.
A huge mistake.
I couldn't agree more. Floyd, thank you very much indeed for your calls. Some very interesting thoughts and insights there from people who were in and around Wolverhampton at the time. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 11:30 and time for the news with Philip Chryssikos.
The Health Secretary is giving social media companies a week to explain how they're dealing with underage usage of their services and cyberbullying. Jeremy Hunt is accusing the likes of Facebook and Twitter of failing to protect young people. 31 people have been killed after a suicide bomber struck a voter registration centre in Afghanistan. It happened in the capital Kabul. 54 others have been injured. Britain's David Weir has won his 8th London Marathon title in the wheelchair race. More than 40,000 competitors are taking part in the various races in what's expected to be the warmest in the marathon's 38-year history. LBC weather, humid with warm sunshine across the southeast this morning. Cloudy and fresh elsewhere, showery rain across the west. That'll move into the southeast by the afternoon. A high of 24 degrees.
LBC Travel, the London Marathon continues, so roads stay closed across the route. In Greenwich and Blackheath, roads will start to reopen in about half an hour, followed by all other roads in South East London by 4 o'clock this afternoon. In East London, along the river through the city and Westminster, roads are expected to be open by 7 o'clock this evening. For full details of the closures, go to our website, lbc.co.uk. The planned strike affecting DLR services is off, so extra trains are running for the marathon. And on the M25 clockwise in Essex, they're accused onto the QE2 bridge after a police investigation earlier on. All the lanes are now open, but it's still taking about half an hour to get through. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
Do you hear that? That's the unmistakable sound of cashback. Do you hear that? That's the sound of cashback too. There it is again. Listen.
Earn money back on every pound spent at places like petrol stations, supermarkets, or local restaurants with your American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. No annual fee. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Terms and minimum annual spend applies.
This is the sound of someone with a million things to do waiting in. Your time is precious. We're with you. So our engineers call ahead to let you know when they're on their way. Search British Gas Home Care. 95% of engineers call ahead.
At the third stroke, the time sponsored by Cunard will be any time you like. Time to stop. Time to relax. Time to indulge. Time to love. Showtime. Time for a voyage with Cunard.
£1.20.
£1.20.
£1.20? Grab yourself this better than half-price Super Saver deal from the Co-op. A 4-pack of Muller fruit or Crunch Corner for just
£1.20.
Was £2.65. Participating stores only, subject to availability. Offer ends 8th of May.
In the Sunday Times this weekend, be inspired with 20 brilliant ideas to spruce up your garden. Brighten dark corners with flash containers. Green up your lawn or add a fire pit. Plus, subscribers can redeem a summer flowers offer. Pick up your copy of the Sunday Times this weekend. Terms and conditions apply.
Oops!
A spag bowl. But if you're one of millions that experience joint or muscle pain, even cooking can be a tall order, especially at the end of a long day. Turn to Voltarol for targeted pain relief. We're experts in body pain, so whether it's osteoarthritis, joint pain, or you overdid it in the gym or in the kitchen, we can help get you moving again. But it won't do the dishes. Voltarol, the UK's #1 selling pain relief gel.
Based on sales data, Voltarol MGLP contains diclofenac diethylammonium. Always read the label.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Was Enoch Powell right or wrong when he gave that speech 50 years ago? And what does it mean today? And I'm getting plenty of you now coming on saying that he got it wrong and it was bad what he said. But before we go back to that, let's go down to Tower Bridge, where LBC's reporter Chris Golds is there. What's happening at Tower Bridge, Chris?
Morning, Nigel.
Morning.
Well, as I'm sure you can hear...
Well, we were...
Quite literally hundreds of runners here as they... Hello, Nigel?
Yeah, I can hear you. Well, it sounds like the LBC's report is being overwhelmed by sound.
Yeah, thousands of people here cheering on spectators.
We're going to have to come back to Chris Golds. It all sounds terribly exciting down there at Tower Bridge, doesn't it? 41,000 people taking part in the London Marathon on what's going to be the hottest ever London Marathon. The noise, the crowd sounded quite extraordinary. Let's go to John in Hackney. John, good morning.
Hi, Nigel. I'm a first-time caller.
Well,
Very
welcome.
nervous.
Welcome. Well, John, I promise you, people say nervous. Actually, it's just like having a chat with somebody. Now, I've made these points, John, that I don't believe Powell was a racist as an individual, but I can see why the speech did cause offence to a lot of black people.
Absolutely. I mean, a couple of things. So the words used, he's talking about black people, he's talking about whip hand. Those two words invoke, slavery, things that happened then, and things may be turned back on white people, and black people may start to do what happened to them. That's the kind of thoughts that it kind of conjured up for people, I feel.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't understand how people can say he's not racist if he's talking about black people in that way. You've got Indian people calling up and saying, "Oh, he wasn't a racist. We used to like him before that," etc. But if you're talking about you're going to be overflooded by black people and inciting such rage and fear amongst white people, this is racism. I mean, you couldn't get away with this today.
The trick that he used, John, was he said that a lot of constituents had been writing to him or had been meeting him. And so what he was doing is he was quoting the constituent. So it was a constituent that said to him, that he feared that in 15 to 20 years' time, the black man would have the whip hand over the white man. So Powell was saying, I'm not saying it, but my constituent did, and we can't ignore the fact that people feel like this. I think you're right. I think you're right. When you say, John, you wouldn't get away with it today, I think that's probably true.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, I was like a child in the 70s, and towards the late 70s, I remember being in Stoke Newington, walking down Lordship Road with my shorts, cars driving by, shouting at nigger and spitting at me, and me having to run all the way home at like 8, 9 years old, and seeing NF logo sprayed across Hackney. But at that time, I didn't know anything about it.
Okay, well, that's...
Now, obviously, it makes sense to me.
Careful what words we use here, John. But no. But that wasn't. I mean, do you think that sort of thing that was being shouted at you was happening because of Enoch Powell, or is what Enoch Powell did in '68 to alert people to the fact that there are people feeling like this, and that if immigration's not controlled, it could get worse?
Those things were happening to me and other people like me because of fear, because of just not knowing, the African Caribbean community, etc. But it was incited and, petrol thrown on the flames by people that people respected. Like you said, he was a brigadier, he was very learned, very cultured. And if he can say things like that, then to the people who are not as cultured and learned as him, it's like, okay, we're right in what we're thinking. So it is right for us to do that. And then to add as well, at that time, I'm sitting at home watching Roots on TV as well. And I'm sure the racist, bigoted people watching that as well. So with all of these things all coming together around the same time, within the same decade, etc., it just is...
Okay, so John...
Absolutely...
John, yeah, I mean, the way you describe it...
Dangerous.
The way you describe it is you feel that Powell threw petrol on the flames, yeah?
100% flew petrol on the flame, and somebody as learned as him knows what they're doing. As you've already said, he knew what he was doing, and I don't believe for a second you would come out with stuff like that if you don't have some of those thoughts within you as well. So all of this thing of it's just regurgitating what other people had been saying is that's like just a way to kind of move the shift away from who he is really, and etc. So I know you've had a good experience with him. You drove for him, etc. And I've got no doubt that he was a really nice person and all of these things. But people have agendas. People have their true thoughts and feelings. And if you need to mask it by saying, this is what people say, rather than saying, this is what I believe, that's what you do. And that's what a wise man would do.
Yeah, John.
And so I respect him for his wisdom, for not putting it fully on himself and putting it on the people that he spoke to. That was very smart of Enoch. But I find it very difficult and I find it hard to listen to, say, for instance, Asian people saying, oh, he wasn't racist. If he was saying, be careful of Jewish people, be careful of Asian people, this would be a totally different conversation. He said, be careful of black people. And that's the problem. It's very specific.
Okay, no, John, I think, for a first-time caller, you've made your point extremely well. And thank you. Thank you for calling. Actually, on the Asian stuff, I do remember an interview when he was asked a question. He said, well, you love India, Enoch. I mean, what's the problem with people coming to this country? To which he replied, yes, I love India, but I've no desire to see Birmingham turned into India. So actually, he was very, very nervous about large-scale immigration from different cultures. That was at the heart of it. But I can quite easily see that this language would have led to greater tensions. Tim is calling from Hatfield. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you. Hello. There's a dissonance here because what the actual choice of words Enoch Powell used, I absolutely condone. To isolate black, not condone. Sorry, to say.
I just wanted to check, Tim, but okay, let's go with condemn, not condone.
No. It was disgusting the way he isolated the black community, and I totally disagree with that choice of words. But I understand what he was trying to say. He was not identifying a colour. He was identifying a culture. Let's go back to Britain in the 1960s. It was a very different nation. I'm the son of an immigrant. My mother's from Finland, my father's British. She said when she arrived in the 50s, this was a beautiful country. Sunday, everyone went to church. It was a very Christian nation. And Powell, which a lot of the callers haven't mentioned, was a devout Christian.
Oh, profound Christian, absolutely, yes.
Profound.
Yeah.
And what he feared, and I understand this, was not colour. And I have black, Asian, whatever. This is not what he was driving about. He was saying our identity is Judeo-Christian. Our laws are based on Judeo-Christianity. Our history, thousands of years of history, is based on that. Our civilization that we took to the world is based on that. What he feared was what he saw in India when the partition happened, that he saw a clash of cultures. And let me correct what's her name, Alibi Brown, where she said it was the British who caused it. Let me put that lady straight, who is actually a more devout racist than Powell, because it was actually Jinnah who said Islam cannot coexist with other religions. And that was the reason for the partition of Pakistan. That was why Britain had to, appease Jinnah, who said we cannot mix. We cannot have a nation where Islam is mixing with other cultures. And Powell saw that. 50 years later, look at our nation. Very few people go to church. Very few people go to church. People do not understand the Queen is the head of the church. Our civilization, our history, the Reformation is based on the Bible. But what we're doing, particularly accelerated under Blair, was creating a homogenized one nation, one culture. And the problem is, Nigel, the rights are freedoms we take for granted. But if you go to an Islamic country, you go to, say, India, where there's a terrible caste system, we just accept this as normal, but it is based on a Judeo-Christian principle.
No, and Tim, there are parts of our cities. There are parts of our cities today that are separated off, not integrated with the rest of the community that live in that city, and I've seen streets in places in the north of England where English is not spoken, and these are the kind of divisions and tensions that exist between the white working class and migrant groups. They're the kinds of things that Powell was talking and warning about, but he did it in such a way that it made it very difficult for anybody else to have a proper conversation about it. I'd love to phone you, Nigel, but I'm in a Land Rover looking at tigers in a safari park. Powell was the greatest Prime Minister we never had. I keep hearing he was a clever man. Well, he must have been a very clever man with no common sense. Apart from delivering a nonsensical, inflammatory speech, he was completely wrong. And the common sense point, Les, is a good one. I think what this speech showed was bad judgment. Because why would somebody who was trying to become the Prime Minister give a speech that led to him being cast out of the political establishment? He was brilliant in many ways, and a deep Christian, as Tim just said. In fact, that particular day that I'd driven him back from Newbury, I asked him, what are you working on at the moment? And he said, I'm rewriting the New Testament. Only from Powell. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:45.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Ian Payne.
New recommendations to the police suggest they shouldn't always believe the victims of alleged crime, particularly sexual offences. That's a great idea. Or is it?
Ian Payne on LBC.
With breakdown cover from the AA, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure your big wheels keep on turning. Our mechanics usually fix your car within 30 minutes of arriving. Breakdown cover from the AA, because anything can happen.
Want to progress more in your career or run your own business?
With a business degree at GSM London, you can follow your bold dreams to success.
Degrees are awarded by the University of Plymouth, and at GSM London, you can start a degree without formal qualifications on our foundation year.
So why wait till October? Start a degree this June.
Search Have Bold Dreams at GSM London now.
GSM London. Have bold dreams.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best-read Sunday paper. And this weekend in life, our inspirational lifestyle supplement.
There's me, Dr. Michael Mosley, with my new 5-2 diet plan. I've revised and updated the diet that's helped so many people lose weight to make it easier than ever. With brand new recipes and clever tweaks to help you slim down for summer. You could lose up to 2 stone in just 12 weeks with my new improved 5-2 diet plan.
Only inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
BT Infinity's super fast speeds mean you can enjoy lightning fast downloading, super fast streaming and super fast online gaming. All at our lowest ever standard price for fibre. $24.99 a month on an 18-month contract. And now with no setup fees when you join BT before the 26th of April. Super fast fibre for super fast everything. Search BT Broadband to join today.
Prices may change. New customers, 30 gigs usage, terms apply.
Here are some things you can afford to miss at work. Keyboard warriors. Meaningless jargon.
Let's just circle back and align.
That thing that's going round. Ugh. But you can't afford to miss calls to your small business, because missed calls cost you money. eReceptionist manages and diverts your calls. Plus, you can dial out from your eReceptionist number on your mobile. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at ereceptionist.co.uk. T's and C's apply. See website for details.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
It's London Marathon Day and it's hot. It's the hottest it's ever been for the London Marathon. We're going to go back. We had a few gremlins on the line. Let's go back to Chris Gold's down at Tower Bridge. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Nigel. Well, yes, as I suppose you can hear, 40,000 runners have set off on this 26.2-mile route amid warnings that temperatures could hit, as you say, 24 degrees. The hottest marathon previously was back in 2007, where 22.6 was recorded at St James's Park, and there were some issues there. One runner died after collapsing during the race, and 73 had to go to hospital. Obviously, organisers don't want the same again today.
Sure.
So they've said there's plenty of water, there's lots of shower stations, there's a lot of ice on standby, and that those who are running should attempt to reduce how much time they want to beat their record by. Now, the Met Office said that it would actually feel hotter on the course because of the warmth from the tarmac and from other people. I'm standing right in the middle of Tower Bridge. It's absolutely beautiful. Blue skies. I was here this time last year and I was absolutely freezing. Totally different story.
And it sounds,
today.
I mean, the noise, Chris, sounds extraordinary.
It is. There's so many supporters here from so many charities just supporting people who are running the marathon, and people who've spoken to me who've run it before said that's what makes the London Marathon, the supporters, the fact that it's on the iconic route running 26.2 miles through London. And this part of the route is actually pretty tough. It's mile 12 at Tower Bridge, and they have to go up a 20-metre elevation to go to this point, one of the few elevations of the route. And instead of turning left and going down towards the Mall, which is what you want to do naturally, they've actually got to go right and run all the way down to Canary Wharf. So another 14 miles to go after this point. And I can see on their faces it's pretty tough going already. Just in terms of what's happened with the race already, the Queen pressed the button at the grounds of Windsor Castle. Britain's David Weir has won his 8th London Marathon title, winning the men's wheelchair race, and 4-time Olympic champion Sir Mo Farah. He's hoping to beat his 2014 time of 2 hours, 8 minutes and 21 seconds.
Terrific. Chris, thank you very much. Enjoy the party. Well, I have to say, the noise down there just sounds completely extraordinary. Back to Enoch Powell, 50 years on, what that speech means to you. Was he right? Was he wrong? Monica is calling from Southend-on-Sea. Good morning.
Hello. Admire you very much. I'm black. My parents came from the Windrush.
Yep.
I've got half and half. So I was born over here. I became very successful as vice president of brokers, whatever. And but I sort of understood what you were trying to say. Enoch Powell and you were not saying the same thing, I'm afraid. I don't see you as racist. I see him as racist. And I just want to correct the other chap who said that what Enoch Powell was worried about was the fact that it was a devout Christian country and that the Queen and everyone on the Windrush was devout Christian.
They were. No, that's true. That is absolutely true.
And even now, even in all these countries, they adore the Queen, they adore the British Empire. They're actually, in those countries, naming places after them. So it wasn't a fact of coming over, because I understand that. It wasn't a fact of coming over and changing all. They might have spoken a different accent, the same language. They might have eaten different food, but they weren't trying to smother, like nowadays, what was going to smother your beliefs or anything. They were very... My mum and dad said, keep your head down if someone... that was the attitude then. I know it's different now, but what I'm saying to you is that guy did us, my parents, a great disservice by saying what he said, because it's just not true. There was no one that I knew who came over that wasn't Christian.
Yeah, no. I think...
And went to church.
What he'd seen, Monica... What he'd seen, of course, in India with partition... was Hindus, turning against Muslims and vice versa. That was the religious war that he'd seen. And I think I'm right in saying that in the year of partition, about 1 million people died on that border. So it was pretty horrendous what happened in 47, 48 in India.
What I'm saying to you is, what seems to be happening, this discussion I'm quite pleased with, it had to be had, so don't get me wrong. But what I'm seeing is, they're trying to lump everyone together, and you can't do that nowadays. There's a lot of different groups like in every country. Yeah. The Indians are different. They're very strong about their religion, which is totally different from the British religion. I'm not criticising them. It's not my place. I'm just saying you cannot just lump all immigrants together.
No,
actually, the Windrush people, they came over with intention. You saw that they came down, they had suits on, they had lovely dresses on.
Absolutely.
They wanted to integrate into...
And some of their kids, Monica, have now found they haven't got British passports and they're not welcome.
It could have been me, and I've got a degree. But I am 60-odd.
Well, it could have been you, Monica, because that's about the age of people that are appearing and not wanted anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And when I heard, my heart, because there were 7 of us, 3 born in this country, so we had our passports, and my brothers and one sister, 4 not. They've got all theirs, but only because we were educated in a certain way. Now, why is it because someone hasn't been? They should be penalised. I do think, my heart hurts, because except the time when I voted UKIP, I vote Tories the whole time, because I like the idea of people got work. You come over here, you got work, you've got to try and respect the country you come into. That's not racism. So don't get me wrong, but sadly, I was surprised how little people know about the Caribbean people. They try and rope them in with Africans. You can't, because you can't rope them. The Asians are never going to necessarily support us, because they're from a different... They're not going to be picked on at the same time we are for the same reasons. They don't see themselves above us.
Some of this gets a bit complex, Monica, but overall, you feel Powell did a great disservice to your parents, yeah?
But I do think they've got to keep an hold on immigration. I totally agree, because I don't want to pay for everyone. And Tom, Dick and Harry's not working, and Christ knows what. People who work hard, you've got to, whatever colour. But the sad thing about this government is they can't get out the East Europeans. Not that I think they should be checking and letting people in, and they should. So what they've done is they've chosen blacks and chosen people who are legal.
Well, this is because of the open door to Europe, we decided to crack down elsewhere. Monica, one thing for certain is whatever language we use today, and it may be very different from 50 years ago, but the arguments over immigration, numbers and integration are just as important as they were back in 1968. Let's go to Peter, who's calling from Sunningdale. Good morning, Peter.
Oh, good morning, Nigel. Yes, I think I'll put another slant on this, that many of the problems that we have today really stem right back to the 60s. I worked in the House of Parliament from the 64 to 1980. I saw the Enoch Powell situation and everything else. And when I put it forward, because my wife's French, I put it forward that, why can't we have identity cards? The Mandarins there said, good God, man, you don't know much about politics. No British government will ever vote for identity cards. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, numbers, dear boy, numbers. Nobody in the government, or even in the sort of parliamentary side, want to know exactly how many people in the country. And, of course, if you've got identity cards, you would and that would have avoided all these problems with the Windrush situation, because they'd have all had identity cards and would have all been able to have a peaceful...
that's the first person I've heard this week make that point. I've actually, Peter, not been in favour of ID cards, because I don't like the concept of sort of being stopped in Bromley High Street and asked to produce my papers. But yes, Windrush would have been completely avoided with identity cards. You are right about that. When you worked in the House of, in the Houses of Parliament, I mean, what sort of a figure was Powell?
Are very highly rated. I mean, we talked about Teethy Heathy, who got rid of him, but that was a very bad thing. I think, unfortunately, there was a lot of misnomers at that time. A very fragile situation with people because of the immigration situation. People got inflated in all sorts of directions, and you could have left or right. It didn't matter. Everybody was against the situation. The moment that it was an explosion waiting to happen, if you know what I mean, and unfortunately, Enoch pressed the button and off it went.
Yeah.
And perhaps we're not able now to, well, we're starting to talk more about it because of people like yourself who are able to sort of talk about it. But I think one of the things I would say is that you've said for many years that up until the sort of 90s we had approximately 30,000.
That's right. 30,000 people a year went to 300,000 a year, Peter.
Yeah. Now, that should be emphasised every time anybody talks. They must emphasise that because, unfortunately, people seem to forget that they talk about we've had immigration for many years, which we have, but we haven't had them at this volume.
No, and when Powell spoke, the number had gone up to 50,000 and looked like increasing. And in fact, it was Mrs. Thatcher who brought some very strict immigration rules in that brought the numbers right back down in the 70s. But listen, thank you, Peter. I've got time for one last call. First time caller to the show, Francesca from Holland Park. Good morning.
Good morning there. Hi. Just a small point. When I was at university 10 years ago, they said I needed to translate Thucydides' The Peloponnesian War, and which was between Athens and Sparta. But obviously all speaking Greek, and I couldn't translate the Greek very well. So the teacher said, "Go and look at Enoch Powell's notes on the Peloponnesian War," and of course he was a genius. And the way he dissects language, and everyone's talked today about how violent his language was. Greek is a very visual language, and that's how the Greeks spoke of their ideas in images. And
that's a very, very interesting point, Francesca. Very interesting point. And he was, and Francesca, we're out of time, I'm sorry, thank you, but a very interesting point you make. And he was, intelligence-wise, he said on the Parkinson show, he said he'd never met his intellectual equal. So he was an extraordinary figure, but it was a very divisive speech, and it did, I think, do a lot of damage. The words were not the right ones. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow night at 7. At 3 this afternoon, it's Andrew Castle. But up next, it's Ian Payne.
Thank you, Nigel. Good afternoon or morning, everybody. The police are being advised to stop their controversial policy of automatically believing anyone who reports a crime, particularly a sexual offence. Official guidance currently suggests they should automatically assume that alleged victims are telling the truth. But now the idea could be overturned, even though the police are being told to still listen to the victim and take them seriously. This, of course, follows a series of flawed inquiries based on false allegations, such as those involving Sir Cliff Richard, DJ Paul Gambaccini, ex-Army Chief Lord Bramall, and various politicians. So